Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Wilderness Fitness Podcast. I'm your host this evening, Dr. Rob Minturn, owner and founder of the Wilderness Fitness Institute, physical therapist, strength and conditioning specialist. Appreciate you guys' patience on getting these last two episodes out. Two last week. My parents were in town. We were down in the Kenai fishing. Got back way late Thursday night. I think it was like 8:30 or so. So I didn't have time to get the podcast out because I was fishing until 3 in the morning. Got up again at like 8:30 and started fishing again. So it's been a crazy month here in July, end of June, early July, or end of July. But finally done fishing now for the most part, and on a caribou here in a few weeks, and then elk in Oregon. So looking forward to September. It's going to be a lot of hunting and hardly any working. So that's how it should be, in my opinion, anyway. But tonight we're going to be talking about adapting your way off the mountain. This came to me, the idea came to me listening to a podcast. And in the podcast, they talked about like adapt and modify versus restore and rehab. The podcast was between a PT and an OT, talking about how the OT, when she's working with folks, like she's not the traditional OT that has people with like smaller dumbbells and doing like band work and working on ADLs. Like she has her patients doing pull-ups, doing bent over rows, push-ups, that sort of stuff, because it works the wrists, it works the forearms. Those are activities of daily function, right? Pushing yourself up off the ground if you fall on the ground, pushing yourself off the countertop, being able to do all that sort of stuff is within the OT scope of practice. So the topic of adapt and modify or restore and rehab came up within the podcast, and the example that she used was when someone's going to the bathroom, they're having a hard time going to the bathroom. Would they rather teach them how to modify and be able to wipe their butt, when they have a hard time turning and wiping their butt, or they can't because their back hurts, or they can't because they had shoulder surgery, or and now they can't really move the arm? Or would the patient rather be taught how to restore and rehab and get stronger so that way they can continue to do it themselves? And 99.9% of the time, she is told, I would rather restore and rehab. So, versus adapting and modifying the activity. So, that's where this topic came from. And I wanted to apply it to the mountain. I wanted to apply it to the population that I work with you all, and what that looks like. So, at some point, you're going to have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? This one's geared towards more the older adult here, the older hunter, but same thing applies to folks who are young and in their upper 20s, low 30s, mid 30s, maybe low 40s, and they're having to adapt and modify what they're doing in the field, what they're doing on the mountain, and even what they're doing at home. The whole dad bod thing is really taken storm here with the millennial generation, and I'm not proud to say it, right? It's not a good thing. It's not something to really own. Like it's something that you should really try to prevent and not be a part of, because it's not good. Um, so, when are you going to stop adapting and when are you going to start restoring your strength, your capacity to work, your capacity to be a parent, your capacity to be a grandparent? Like, at what point are you going to say enough is enough? Hopefully, you don't have to hit rock bottom in terms of having a heart attack or a stroke or something early on in your middle age, older adulthood. But if that's what it takes, that's unfortunate. But hopefully, it doesn't take that for you to realize that you need to get your shit together and start turning it around. So, that's what we're going to be talking about. So with three examples on kind of like the adapt and modify or restore and rehab. I talked about the older adult toileting. Ask yourself, would you rather adapt with a commode, adapt with a bidet because you can't turn around and wipe? Would you rather get grab bars, or would you rather restore your strength and restore your mobility in your legs and your spine so that way you can turn and clean yourself, and so that way you can get up from the toilet without having to have help from somebody else, because eventually, like, you might not have to do it now, but eventually you're going to have help from somebody else. And I think a lot of us, especially here in America, it's a pride thing, right? It's a pride thing to not have to have help from somebody else. So at some point, you're going to have that happen if you're not taking care of yourself. So um, yes, restoring and rehabbing, it might not get you a six pack, and that might not be your goal, and that's totally fine. You need to be able to be strong and be fit in order to take care of yourself into older adulthood. Same thing with older adults on the mountain. Example here is like you went from backpacking to maybe day hunting. And now you're hunting from the camper. Now you're hunting from the hotel. Now you're not even going hunting anymore. You're just hunting from the road, right? At what point are you going to not be okay with the current situation? Fitness can stack on itself year to year, but also deconditioning can stack on itself year to year if you're not taking care of yourself. So it doesn't take much. 3 days a week is all it really is, the bare minimum. 3 days a week for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, it doesn't take much. If you want to spread it out and you want to do something every day, that's going to be a lot better because you can have variety in your workout routines and not get bored. And you can hit a lot more things like mobility, strength, cardio, and not have to hit it super hard every single time because you're doing something every single day. But there's always a happy medium between the 3 days a week and 7 days a week too. Um, but another example in pelvic health. So incontinence, I talk about pelvic health. I have a specific day for pelvic health during my week that I talk about it. I also have a specific podcast on pelvic health. But I'm going to loop it into this one too, with pelvic health, with your continence. Moms after kids, women without kids, women, maybe you got a little extra weight, men after prostatectomy, men getting into older adulthood and having incontinence issues as they get older, as they get a little heavier. At what point are you going to stop being okay with wearing Depends and you continue to modify? Or at first you're wearing pads, and then at some point it's going to progress to the point where you have to wear Depends because you're going to be incontinent with both bowel and bladder, right? You're going to be shitting your pants. And then probably at that point, you're going to be needing help with cleaning yourself up too, because it's going to be a mess down there. At what point are you just going to suck it up and rehab your pelvic floor? Something to consider there. And then also with pelvic health, your sex life. Maybe you stop having penetrative sex because it hurts. At some point, it could progress into maybe intimacy as a whole, or intimacy as a whole is painful for you. At what point are you going to say enough is enough, and I'm going to restore and rehab my pelvic floor, so that way you can have intimacy with your partner. Um, Mountain fitness. So backpacking, I touched on this a little bit earlier, like a few minutes ago, with the kind of in the older adult section, but with your fitness. Again, you used to backpack in, then you switched to a wall tent, and then you went to a camper. Now you're using side by sides. You're hunting from the hotel. That's your choice at this point. That's the only option that you have. You don't really have the option to backpack in because you physically cannot do it. So at what point, like, where are you going to be at on that hunting continuum where you say enough is enough and I need to start doing something? And not you need to start doing something about it to train and to get a little more fit so that way it doesn't continue to progress. Obviously, if you're hunting in your 80s and 90s, you might not be backpacking in. Always going to be a select few. I backpacked last year. The dude was 70 years old, and we backpacked in 5, 6 miles, camped, and then we hiked. The next day, we hiked another 8 miles, and then the day after that, we packed the 4 or 5 miles out. We weren't hunting. We were backpacking. He was actually my landlord at the time. So it was him, myself, and then one of his friends that he worked out with. Those guys, those guys showed up 4 or 5 days a week to the gym at the clinic that I was working at because the clinic there had a gym membership option. They showed up 4 to 5 days a week and they worked out. And he did not have to train. Like he didn't have to say, "Well, I got to do it at the end of the summer so that way I have enough time to train." It was like, "Do you want to go backpacking this weekend?" Like they asked me if I wanted to go. I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." They were always ready to go, right? So he had just turned 70 back in February. He was able to do it no matter what because he continued to train and continued to stay fit. Um, so again, at what point are you going to say enough is enough and you're going to stop making excuses for yourself and start hitting the gym and start getting yourself more fit because it's just going to trend in the downward direction, right? Uh, and then this exam, like adapting your way off the mountain, adapting and modifying and restoring and rehabbing, it applies to every single person getting ready for the mountains. It's not necessarily just backpackers or just road hunters. It truly is every single person that's recreating up in the mountains. You're going to have to be creative as we get older, you might invest a little bit more in a heavier sleep system just because you're going to get a little more stiff. We lose mobility, we lose joint mobility, we lose muscle elasticity as we get older. There's some things that we physiologically cannot change, but you can change the grade and how much that does change. So something to consider there. And then creativity. Um, as far as creativity goes, like you got to ask yourself, where do you want to be creative? Do you want to be creative in the gym and with your workouts, or do you want to have to be creative at home with your daily life, with mowing the lawn, with getting up and down from the couch, which with getting up and down from the toilet, right? Um, your exercise routine does not need to be fancy. Exercise is scalable to the way that I do things is the program that folks go through. It is taught at a you can do everything, you have no issues, right? And then so that way the person with the highest level of fitness benefits from it. And then I scale it back. And that's the reason why we have the group Q&A. That's the reason why we have the one-on-ones, is we scale it back to the person's needs and the person's abilities. So where do you want to be creative at? Do you want to be creative with the 45 minutes in the gym? 45 minutes to an hour, or do you want to be creative the other 23 hours a day? Because um, it's going to progress. It, as in your immobility is going to progress if you're not doing anything about it. That's just a simple fact of age. Um, so it's not the fact that your metabolism slows down. It's not it's the fact that you're losing muscle mass because that's what happens after the age of 30 due to hormonal changes. But there are things that you can do. You can get a good night's sleep that boosts testosterone. You can lift weights that boosts testosterone. You can eat adequate amount of protein, your zero point 0.7 to zero point 0.9 grams of protein if you're an active individual. That's going to keep your testosterone levels where they need to be. So that's again something to consider is where do you want to be creative? Is it the 45 minutes in the gym, like I said, the 45 minutes to an hour in the gym, or is it going to be the other 23 hours in the day? Um, having to adapt your sleeping position. You can't sleep in bed anymore because you can't lie flat because it hurts your back. Now you're sleeping on a couch, you're sleeping in a recliner. Now your hips aren't getting totally flat with lying down flat, and now that's gonna exacerbate your back pain because you're no longer letting those hips stretch out. You're no longer letting that back stretch out and completely decompress. That's the role of lying down. It does help decompress the spine, but you can't do that because it hurts, right? So again, where are you choosing to be creative? For me, I'd rather be creative in the gym. I'd rather have to think of ways to modify my workouts if I have an injury going on from just feeling stiff or sore that day versus having to modify my daily routines because I'm stiff and sore from just daily life, right? One thing, an analogy that I gave a patient on Friday afternoon, it was her eval day, coming in for neck pain, headaches, migraines, just a general not healthy human. Um, wasn't getting outside, was sleeping a ton, would go to bed. She was in bed for, God, 10 hours a night. And then she'd get up and basically eat breakfast, go to the bathroom, and then she'd have to lie back down. And then she would get up and eat lunch. And then she would have to lie back down for 2 hours or so, right? So she's out of bed maybe 10 hours a day. She's in bed for 14 hours a day, 14 to 15 hours a day when we added up the math. And her issue was is that she hurts being out of bed. One, we have to not let our brains tell us what we're going to do. We're going to tell our brain what we're going to do, right? You're not going to let pain dictate what you're going to do. Obviously, if something hurts, like you're having an injury, you need to listen to that. But someone with chronic pain, we have to be creative in terms of not allowing the brain to dictate. Like if you want to go bake brownies, go bake brownies. This person in particular enjoyed cooking, baking, that sort of stuff. It's like go bake the brownie, right? But be creative and like if you can't stand up for that amount of time, bring a step stool or bring a stool in there so that way you can sit down or take a seat. Um, if you want to knit, or I forget what other thing she wanted to do, I was like, you do it, but don't let your brain tell you that you can't, right? Find ways to be creative with how you're going to do it so that way you can still get it done. And that in and of itself is rehab, right? It's good for the mental health, it's good for your mental health, it's good for your physical well-being. She's getting out of bed. So choosing where to be creative. And we talked about a gym membership, and she was very hesitant to look into a gym membership because of the fact that she just hurts all the time. And she had this idea like it was just one. one instance that led to the fact that she started to have this neck pain. And I was like, think about this. Um, your a bridge is built for a certain capacity, right? Say there's this backup on the bridge, you have 10 semis on there. So these semis line up, right? One, and then 10 minutes later, another one lines up, there's two, another one lines up, there's three. And for shits and kicks, I'm just going to say this bridge's capacity is 10,000 pounds before it collapses. Like that's what it's rated for. I don't know if that's true or not. Don't quote me. I'm not a mechanical engineer, but um, and so you have those 10 semis on there, right? Now you're at, or sorry, you have five semis on there. So now you're at 10,000 pounds because each semi was a ton. I think that's a pretty light semi, but now you have an 11th semi come on, right? No one flagged down the semi to not go on the bridge. The 11th semi came on and now the bridge collapses. Shit hits the fan and the bridge collapses. Was it the 11th semi's fault? Or was it the other 10 that really didn't get off the bridge that accumulated? And then that 11th semi was the tipping factor. Um, so in her case, that seems to be what the issue was because she's a relatively unhealthy individual. Degenerative disc disease, talked to her about how that's not a disease. It's normal with aging. It's very common with aging. It is okay to have. And most folks her age, I think it's like in the 70s or low 80% folks in her, she's 55. It's very common for those folks to have, or that percentage of folks to have pain or to have degenerative disc disease and not have pain. There's a lot of research being done on degenerative disc disease back, like imaging results, and showing that people don't have to be in pain just because that shows up. So that bridge analogy really hit home with her. Same thing with the road. I use the road analogy for the degenerative disc disease. Like new roads get built out here in Alaska. Brand new road starts to deteriorate, but the road is still able to be driven on. It deteriorates to the point where it's just a gravel road again, right? It's a dirt road again, but the road can still be used as a road. Same thing with our spine, same thing with our neck. We can still function and have no issues. Yeah, it's going to look different, but you can still drive on the road. You can still use your spine. You can still use your shoulder, whatever joint you're having an issue with. Just because a pathology pops up and it looks different in the image doesn't necessarily mean that the function is not going to be there. Doesn't necessarily mean that pain is going to be there. So something to consider there. But we taught kind of looping all this back together. I asked her, I was like, where do you want to be creative, right? It sounds like you're tired of being creative in your daily life, like having to think of ways to modify things and to adapt things because you can't do them. So what if we got you strong enough to the point where um, you were creative in the gym, creative with your workouts to the point where you don't have to be creative at home anymore. You don't have to think of ways to do things. You can just do them because you're strong enough, because you're fit enough to do things. That really resonated with her. Again, we're getting away from the mountain fitness, but it like that's a very scaled back version, right? If you're dealing with something and you're fit enough to be on the mountain, everything's relative in terms of tissue capacity. So if someone's working out and you and they're starting to have like back pain or knee pain or whatever, but they're active and they're fit and they're working out, it's much easier to work with that person because their tissue capacity is such that where their daily life is not bothering them, right? Something in the gym is bothering them. Some like their recreational activities are bothering them. Sweet. Let's modify that stuff. Let's be creative with how you go about doing that stuff and go about your daily life. Someone who's not active, someone who's not working out, your daily life now becomes your workout. That is a huge problem because now you have to be creative with what you do 24 hours a day. It's no longer that 45 to 60 minutes that you have to be creative and modify things because of an injury. It is now you're 24 hours a day modifying your shit because you simply cannot tolerate your daily life. So you want to build that tissue capacity to allow you to not have to modify your daily life a whole ton as you get older. You will thank yourself. There has not been a single person that's ever gotten stronger that has said, "Man, I wish I wasn't stronger." Like that. That's just not a fucking thing. Um, so again, consider that. Be creative at the gym. Don't be creative at home, or don't have to be creative at home. Okay. Clinical bottom line: if you continue to creatively, I don't know if I'm saying that right. If you continue to be creative and adapt your life, you're going to have to adapt your life. You're going to adapt yourself out of the things that you like to do. Getting older doesn't equate to getting weaker. If you allow it to happen, you will perceive getting older as getting weaker, but that's not true. Okay, that isn't the case. Spend some time being creative in the gym, so you don't have to be creative with your daily life. I've said that probably 15 times on this podcast already. My suggestion in terms of this whole grand scheme of things is choose to be creative with your 45 to 60-minute workouts each day, not with the other 23 hours in the day. All right. Um, if you're listening to this and you've done a bit of reflection during this episode, because you've started to realize that you're adapting a lot of your life, you might be in your 30s, you might be in your 40s or 50s, but you're adapting a lot of your life because you're not taking care of yourself and you just chalk it up as getting older. Um, that's not that's not okay, right? Ask yourself, why haven't you gotten help? Why do you continue to accept that as just part of getting older? It's the phrase, where there's a will, there's a way, directly applies here. Where you have a will, think about something else that, you really didn't want to do, but you did it anyway because it was a priority, right? You got it done because you had to get it done. It's the same thing as your fitness should be the same thing. There's days that you don't want to get up and go for a jog or get up and go for a walk or get up and go to the gym or get up and do your yoga. But you just do it just because you know that's what you simply have to do in order to stay healthy, right? You don't want to be a liability to your family. You don't want to be a liability to your hunting buddies. You don't want to be a liability to yourself if you solo hunt. You want to be an asset to all three of those aspects. You want to be an asset to your family. You want to be an asset to your buddies on the mountain. And you want to be an asset to yourself on the mountain if you go solo hiking and solo hunting. It's plain and simple, right? It's never too late to right the ship. It does have to start with you, though. You can listen to all the motivational podcasts. Motivation wanes, right? But motivation wanes, people fall off. The ones who are committed to doing it are the ones that are going to stick it out. And I think if you ask most people who are extremely fit, most of them say that they do it even when they don't want to. And there's going to be a lot of times where they don't want to. But it's never too late to right the ship. It truly just has to start with you. You got to dig deep and figure out your why. And pick a side, starboard or port. I don't give a shit which one. No one cares which side you go, but you got to turn that ship hard. You got to turn it at a 90-degree angle, maybe even a 180-degree angle. Turn that sucker around. Turn to starboard, turn to port, and pick one and just freaking go. Put your head down and go. Don't hesitate. And if you need help, in 12 weeks, I can show you how to write that ship. But it's got to start with you. Okay. Anyway, hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. I'm not sure when this is going to launch. I might do it tonight, might do it tomorrow morning, but um, I'll catch you guys on the next episode that I'm going to record right now. So usually I say I'll catch you next week, but I'll catch you in about 5 minutes. Peace.